Hey everyone, I'm Adam Harry from BoLS with
Chris from Dragon's Lair Comics and Fantasy.
And we're back with another Tabletop Spotlight. Now Chris, you brought a board game today.
Yes.
And it looks really pretty, but can you explain to the folks at home what this game is?
So Petrichor is this fantastic game where you get to play a rain cloud trying to grow the most clouds and screw over all the other rain clouds trying to do it too.
So you're growing crops and clouds.
Yeah.
To water your crops, but also screw over clouds.
Yes. It's a pretty ridiculous and fun concept.
Yeah. I just like the idea that you're basically like manipulating the weather to
Yes.
grow crops, but then mess with other people trying to do the same thing. So.
Yes. They assume all clouds are happy clouds, but really they're just backstabbers.
Yeah.
And that's
Clouds are
all it
backstabbers.
is.
That's the tech. Yeah,
that's the tagline. Clouds are backstabbers.
And real fast too, Petrichor, that's a weird word. What does that word even mean?
So I'm pretty sure it means that it's the smell that you get after a fresh rain.
There you go, Petrichor. You've learned something. Learning has occurred. Let's go ahead and dive into Petrichor. Petrichor, the pleasant earthy smell after rain. So yeah, it is. It's a noun. N. Right there. No.
Fantastic.
They yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyway, let's open this box on up. It's a really pretty packaging, by the way.
Oh yeah,
really
you did
well
a gorgeous job with it.
Ooh, the rule book here. We'll go through that in a second. This is a full color rule book. How many pages are we looking at here? 20 page rule book, not bad.
Pretty quick. And you've got your cardboard pushouts, of course. You got your clouds here, your lightning bolts if you become thunderstorms, your different plants, and all the different crops you can try and grow. I think that's pretty much the same across all of them.
Okay, there's looks like
different
plants.
ones, yep.
Okay.
And then
potatoes up there. They have their science names by them too.
Yes.
Sweet. This is the grow board, I think, that you move around, or the tracker.
This is the point tracker and the voting board for when you're voting on the weather and how it's going to start.
Okay.
And then, of course, you got all your components. So you've got your different character tokens represent you, as well as the first player, Big Cloud.
Big Cloud, yeah.
All your different rain. Each player gets their own custom raindrops.
Yeah, these are glass beads. We've seen these before. Big old glass round beads.
And of course, you got your harvest dice here, as well as your regular die to use. And we'll talk about that when we go over the rules. And then you've got your different playing cards to represent the different crops and stuff that you can try and raise, and the different weather patterns you have. So.
Cool. Yeah, pretty straightforward. The game, the cards look really nice.
Yep.
And the backs, there's card actions as well.
Yep.
Different players in those. Yeah. And again, it's got this nice vacuum form plastic thing. And just because we always like to check, there's nothing hidden underneath, so no secret clouds. Sometimes you never know, man.
Just a secret cloud indent in the vacuum form.
Right there. So okay, cool. Let's go ahead and cut real fast and take a look at those rules.
Sounds good.
Okay, here's the rule book. Again, it's 20 pages of full color, but it's really it's laid out really easy to follow and track.
It's big print and everything, nice and easy to pick up. You've got your components here, which is going to take up a huge page.
Real fast too, the whole point of the game is for players again to grow crops, and you score points based on those crops. And points are scored having the most water on a tile in the fields during harvest, and by having the most votes on the two selected weather effects each round. So again, score points. Once you get points, try to screw other players over, so they have less points, so that you have the most points.
Exactly. And so you got your whole list of components, which we just went over, so you don't need to see too much of that. Then of course you've got your setup, so you got your big board in the middle with your entire fields planted here. Your game cards go out to each of the players with their own respective pieces. That's how the board sets up. Nice, straightforward, simple.
Yep. And there's different setups too. You can do a 2-player, 4-player, 2-player, 3-player, 4-player. And again, you mentioned there's a solo mode, right?
Yep, there is a solo mode. And one thing to consider too is that the different players will actually dramatically affect how many tiles are in play. So that is something else to consider.
Keep that in mind.
And then of course we're going not going to go into everything about the game here, but the general idea of the game is you're just trying to get your clouds to drop their rain on proper crops. We're going to pull out one of the crops real quick just to show you how scoring would work.
Yeah.
So when you get some drops on this one, if you have the most, you take the first one, second most gets the second, so on and so forth. So for most crops, taking the first one would be good. Let's see if I can find one right here that's a pretty simple, straightforward one. Here you go. Nice and straightforward. Score 5 if you have the most, 1 if you have the second most, and nothing if you have the third most.
And
However,
is this number, what is the first number there?
that first number is how many raindrops it needs to grow.
Oh, so it's got to have at least 2.
And it doesn't have to be 2 of yours, just 2.
Just 2 okay.
And then whoever has the most gets the scores. And this is where maneuvering other people's rain comes in, because sometimes scoring second is actually more beneficial, or third or fourth. So something to consider about that. That's why you're moving other people's rain clouds around, shifting or shifting yours.
Yeah, that's very cool. Basic game flow, there's going to be an action phase, weather phase, harvest phase, and cleanup phase. So we're not going to go over all the phases in the game, but you can kind of guess what you're going to be doing. Action phase, you're going to be manipulating the board, playing cards. Yeah, there's also a vote step where you can choose the weather.
Yep, and the team the player who votes the right to weather the most with tokens on them will score extra points because they picked the right weather, and it affects how the weather and the harvest go. Okay. The only other thing we haven't talked about is going to be the harvest dice, and I believe those might be.
Yeah, there's the weather phase. Just going to go through that.
Here's the harvest phase. So you got your harvest phase. So the harvest phase is based on these funky little D6s that don't have normal pips. They have a harvest die and then some pips. So every time you get a harvest where all 3 of them are showing the same harvest symbol, that's a harvest. That's when you score your points. Okay. However, every time that you redo the round, anyone that's not showing a harvest, you re-roll those dice, and it can be entirely different. So there's a way to reduce the number every turn, and the more you pick the harvest action, the more often you're going to get harvests. Okay. So the later the game is, the higher the chances the score.
Interesting, very interesting. And there's also just cleanup phase, and there's also the drafting variant. So it just changes up how you set up, essentially.
Exactly.
And then what else do we have here? We mentioned the solo one.
The solo game is right here. So that's just something you can test on your own, try and build up your own skills. And again, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Not a lot of games have the solo one, but I've noticed more and more games are getting it. Yeah. It's fun to play war games with friends, but it's kind of neat to be able to practice or play some kind of variant mode. Yeah. Because board games are kind of a expensive to not only be able to play with 4 people or whatever. And I also personally, from my experience, games that offer a solo play, that's a great way to do a tutorial for yourself if you're the person who's relied on for the rules. Yeah. And I've always been the person who's been, what are the rules? And instead of busting out a book and just hoping that you get it, walking through a game, even if it's got a little bit different, is a lot easier.
Get some of the basics, and the core mechanics are very similar.
Exactly.
In solo player mode versus multiplayer anyway, so.
And that's it. And then you got the extra promos you can get from the Kickstarter for it. And
this game was a successful Kickstarter, and now it's in stores, so. Yeah,
and that's
cool stuff. And then there's a reference thing for the Southern Winds on the back. And again, we saw the reference cards in there as well. So this game is really designed to pick up and play pretty easily.
Yes.
So. Cool. Let's go ahead and hop out for a really fast recap. Well, that was Petrichor. It's a really pretty game.
Yes.
I love it. It's got some devious mechanics where you're messing with the other people, but it's also simple and quick and fun.
Yep, and it's got a lot of options. One of the things we're going to break down with the numbers here is that it has a solo play option, which we talked about a bit, which is just fun in case you ever want to try something on your own. Yeah. But it's fast, fun, easy, and a little bit of a backstabbing game.
A little bit of a backstab, yeah. It's deceptively strategic as well, is what I like to say to folks when we're looking at games. So let's go ahead and talk numbers real fast. Petrichor, again, you mentioned it is a solo option, but it is designed for 1 to 4 players. Yep. Runtime's pretty fast too, about 20 minutes.
20 minutes, and it has that long version in it that we talked about that can bring it up to about 30 or 40, but again, that's nothing in board game time. So.
Right. And then ages 10 and up, so totally family friendly. What's the price point on this one?
$54.99.
$54.99, and it's in stores right now. Highly recommend it. Go check out Petrichor. I'm Adam here from BoLS.
And Chris from Dragon's Lair Comics and Fantasy.
And this has been another Tabletop Spotlight. Thanks again for watching.
Bye.
Tabletop Spotlight, brought to you by Dragon's Lair Comics and Fantasy. Click to subscribe. Check out more videos. And thanks for watching.